Simbingile Snamgele and welcome to Expressions. This is your #1 youth current affairs show. Namhlanje is again from Hoërskool Jan Viljoen in Randfontein, the west of Johannesburg. Now, this school was at the center of a racial row, a turf which sent shockwaves across the country where students were seen having a fight. We are going to be exploring the issue of racism as we'll be speaking to students as well as parents alike to find out what solutions are there in order for us to curb racism, which seemingly continues to rear its ugly head. What do you have to say about the conversations we're having on the show namhlanje? Do interact with us enkundleni zethu zokuxhumana. Let's take you to the first insert.
From what happened 2 weeks back, Expressions also visited Hoërskool Jan Viljoen, and this is what young people had to say.
We would just like to say that what happened on Friday is very wrong, because why should only the white kids be protected in the school when all of us pay school fees, and why are the white children treated otherwise? And so we as children from Jan Viljoen don't feel safe because parents started treating us and saying that they're going to show us who is the boss of the class and they're going to kill us, they're just going to bring guns and shoot us. How are we supposed to feel safe at our own schools where we pay school fees? Why don't we deserve to be treated equally?
I was one of the females that got punched in the face by a boy. When we reported it to school, they don't do anything. They just remove the boys from the sports, and me and Philan were given detention. How is that fair? Because when we give statements, our statements are not taken into consideration. If it was opposite ways, it would have been dealt in a very different way.
What I wanted to say is that you came here, you spoke to us, you gave us your apology, we accepted. But we actually want an honest, sincere apology from those who hurt us.
I am not safe here anymore at Jan Viljoen, and the school wasn't so. The racism was there, but it wasn't like it is now.
Because we are dealing with minors, there are processes that need to be followed and be protected. Are we together? So all the issues that we've raised, we've gathered that information, we will be in a position to give it to the police and the police will follow it up. The last part, it pains me a lot for all of you to be reminded that you are still black in your own country. And my dear children, I want to assure you, whatever it takes, they might have oppressed our grandparents and succeeded. They might have oppressed our parents and succeeded. They will never oppress our children and our children. So, all the issues of racism in this school, I don't want them to be investigated by the SGB. I don't want them to be investigated by the district. I'm going to call the South African Human Rights Commission to come.
Your #1 youth current affairs show sifikileke eHoërskool Jan Viljoen khona la eRandfontein lapho sobusikhulumisana khona nabantu abasha to find out what they have to say. Welcome to the show, guys. It's great to have you. What have you all experienced at your school?
There was a fight that actually happened. I think I was in grade 8, which was 2019. I was in grade 8 at the time. There was a few benches in the school. There were people, obviously people had their own benches and stuff. So it happened that a few black kids sat on the benches. White people came and they're like, "This is our bench. What are you doing here?" And then there was a fight and all of that. And then the benches got removed. Nothing was resolved or anything. A few years later, the lockers were removed because there was a fight. I feel and they wanted to cut the tree that made the entire fight. They wanted to cut, and we're like, "Why are you cutting it?" Why are you cutting it? Because there's no point of cutting it because there's literally nothing is going to be resolved if they cut the tree.
But what solutions would you like to see being put in place? Do you think there's a way the racism is going to be sorted out?
I feel like yes, there's multiple ways. But then all we want is equality. We're not fighting for anything else. All we want is equality. We want to be treated the same way the white learners or Afrikaans learners are being treated. We want to be treated the same way. We don't want to be treated whereby they here and we over here like we're not people. I mean, we all have the same blood running through our streams, man.
There's a problem, the whole teachers, everyone at the school, including the people that work in the office, everyone is white.
Yeah.
Everyone, there's only one colored teacher.
Yes.
We feel like because the whole staff is basically white, things are not gonna get better.
What is your take on what has been happening at your school?
It's unfair for me on the black people because of these white boys. They would, once they had status in the school. So that's why they were taking the upper hand. So for me, the effect was hard on the school. I know that because of the strikes and stuff, it was hard. And lots of the kids left the school. So a lot of the white rugby players in our school is gone. So there's not going to be full rugby teams in our school.
What do you think needs to be done in order for all of us to be singing from the same hymn book, to be a people that don't see color, but that see a person for what they are as a person? What solutions should be introduced from you guys as young people?
What I have mostly is equality. Equality is very important. Once we have equality, that's when racism won't be no longer knowledged in our school.
Have you seen any racism in the school? Have you ever heard of accounts of racism in the school as a parent?
More officing like it's only white teachers. I got make some teacher and maybe but I le peace and patience for you for bana school le former teacher but I do that with if you back up a mix.
Siqhubekela phambili ngenkulumo yethu ebalulekile around racism ey'koleni zethu as we ask the big question, see expressions. Can we win the fight against racism ey'koleni zethu? You're watching Expressions. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions. Namhlanje siqhubekela phambili ngenkulumo ebaluleke kakhulu around racism ey'koleni zethu. Namhlanje we're still coming to you from Randfontein outside Hoërskool Jan Viljoen. Lapho khona we saw a racial turf being sparked by learners. Siyabuza ke see Expressions. Will we win the fight against racism ey'koleni zethu? Let's take you to the next insert.
Unfortunately, an incident happened here on Friday that brought all of us here. That incident cannot be condoned and be protected and must be condemned. What we have done thus far, which is something that I want to share with you, we've managed to take the full report from the principal. We've also managed to take a full report from the SGB. We also received a full report from the police, and on the basis of those two reports, we are quite convinced that there are some educators that must explain their role, and there are some learners that must explain their role.
Sihlezi-ke umhlaziyi wezepolitiki pheqelezi political analyst Jamie Mighty that joins us now on the show. It's great to have you on the program.
Pleasure to be here.
So let's talk about racism in our schools as we're having this chat. I want to know from you, where do you think this comes from? Because I know when your conversation that I had with one of the parents, they said children are taught racism and they cannot be racism, they were just explain. What do you think is the root cause of all of this?
Ekuqaleni, exposure to each other asinayo. And we must always start there to understand ukuthi when you have the class divides which come from apartheid South Africa, because it was a spatial planning model to separate people on the basis of race. So white children grow up by themselves, black children grow up by themselves. And then now, in the Model C schools, in some of the private schools, people are now coming together. And the first issue that is creating racial animosity is just not knowing each other. But the second issue on top of that is that the class divisions have created a condescending perception to some black people. Because if you did grow up in a house where the only black person you know is the gardener, the maid, the cook, the person who's the security at your gate or at the boom gate of your road, you are not going to have a healthy understanding of blackness, black people, because you interact with black people as service providers. But esikolweni kumele ufunde nomuntu, kumele nisebenzisane, kumele nixoxisane, and that's where we start to see some of the issues. Ekugqibeleni into causa more of this is ukuthi ayikho diversity training. Many of the schools which have had racist incidents, it has been as a result of incident captured on social media and then parental backlash, and then that's when now the school starts to think, what can we do, how can we address this? But that's always too late. What schools need to do is to inculcate diversity training throughout the LO program, throughout all of their programs, so that I'm a teacher, headmaster, ama workers, everyone understands ukuthi we're living in this South Africa together, we are all equal, our dignity is a fundamental right and a fundamental element that must always be recognized. We're just not there yet.
I know also this works both ways. You'd say ukuthi racism can actually be, black on white and white on black. It goes both ways because there's this perception ukuthi umuntu omnyama akakwazi ukuba racist. What's your take on that?
Well, there are two levels of looking at that. There is the academic discussion where academics such as Biko and several other people who have followed in the Black Consciousness School of Thought, they want to reserve the label racism for white on black animosity because of the structural elements that are involved. But then there's the social discussion, which is not necessarily structural, which has to do with antipathy, hatred, and resentment for other races. That does exist. It is very possible for umuntu omnyama ukuthi azonde abelungu, azonde abanye abantu. So we need to examine that because inzondo is the issue actually. The academic discussion, the one about structural racism, is important because our structures must be understood. How do they oppress? How do they discriminate? But at the same time, at the person-to-person level, we also need to understand that we don't have a justification to hate anyone of any race, because at the end of the day, kunento le abayithi lottery of birth. We were all born into these skins. Nobody chose this at Pick and Pay. Nobody went to Markham's wathi ngicela ukuba ngumlungu na imali yami. We were born into these bodies and skins, the lottery of birth leyo. So we must navigate with each other and not discriminate against each other because nobody did anything to be born in the skin that they're in. And we mustn't make skin color, we mustn't make gender, we mustn't make religion, we mustn't make ethnicity an issue of division, an issue of labeling. Ideally, we must be measuring ourselves in the workplace, in the school. How are you doing at school? How are you behaving at school? How are you actually interacting with your peers? That should be the criteria of measurement, not how is this black child doing? Because once you start adding that, we start to have an issue. And I think that's why sometimes kulama Model C schools, if you look, there's a discrepancy in performance. I don't know if you've noticed. Kunezikolo lezi is mixed. And then when you look at the top achievers, you don't always see people of color in the top achievers. And I think it trickles down into how much attention are the black kids getting versus the white kids in those schools. So the issue is not just was there a fight? The issue is also are you catering for everybody the same? Because masbega lezikolo mafoma Model C, sometimes you see large discrepancies in top achiever performance.
So we're taking it back to our schools now. What solutions do you think we need as far as addressing racism in our schools?
Yeah, so I think number one, schools just need to have first tough policies against students so that students know if you do something like this, so there's no if, buts, or maybe you have to go to a different school. I think having those hard deterrents is important so that you just don't have willy-nilly bad behavior. But it's important to recognize that young people are very easy in terms of like to discuss with, to change their minds. They're still forming opinions. They're still impressionable. They're still open. And that's why diversity training based is so important, because ezinye izinto they've just not examined them properly. The things that they were told by their grandparents, by their parents, which are hateful towards black people, towards Indian people, all of those things. These are things that can be taught in the classroom. What people often say in the teaching space, Oguti, it's easier to change a kid's mind than the parent's mind.
Siqhubekela phambili ngenkulumo yethu ebalulekile around racism ey'koleni zethu, as we ask the big question, see expressions. Can we win the fight against racism ey'koleni zethu? You're watching Expressions. Stay with us. Siphinde sinibingelele sinamukele sabukele Expressions, and siyabuza ke namhlanje siuhlelo, are we going to win the fight against racism ey'koleni zethu? Ungakho namhlanje siza kini from Randfontein Hoërskool Jan Viljoen, lapho sobe sikhuluma khona nabazali kanye nabafundi after a racial turf broke out between abafundi just a few weeks ago in the school. Do interact with us enkundleni zethu zokuxhumana and let us know what you think about today's topic. Let's take you to the next insert.
Parents, don't make this thing a racial or a political thing, please, because this is not what it is. This is kids. This is our kids. This is mine and yours. This is our school. We want them to be safe. That's all we ask. Doesn't matter race or color. Parents, we should stand together. Let's leave what's behind.
Even you parents, you need assistance in terms of change management. Even you parents, you need to spend more time together as parents of your own children in this school.
Speak to us about some of your accounts. Do you think there is racism in the school?
Most definitely, because children are complaining. Like I mentioned, that it's only not in the high schools. Even in the primaries, children are always complaining. We go there, we complain, but there is absolutely nothing that has been done. Like I said, if it wasn't for this video, we wouldn't be here, to be quite honest, because there are so many incidents that it has never been even mentioned. Like I said, this video was about racism.
Talk to us as a parent. What do you feel needs to be done in particular to deal with racism in our schools?
That's what I'm saying. My understanding, there is bodies that actually there at school to follow up when this type of things happens. But it seems like they are not doing their work. So even right now, all we're asking is those people who are responsible need to be removed. Not today this had happened with a child, and then tomorrow you see your perpetrator at school again. So it's not working for our kids. I mean, the child will end up dropping out because of the stigma that will always be around them.
So we're letting you go now. As a parent of a child who's at Hoërskool Jan Viljoen, what do you want to see happen?
I want to see those who are responsible for everything to be on detention, to be removed from the school where there is this racism and whatever. If you are practicing that means you're not coming here to learn. You come in to practice something else that is not even at school. Even for the teachers and the bodies at school, they need to teach kids that if you are a racist, you are not allowed. I'm not talking about white kids only. I'm also talking about our black kids. They are not supposed to mistreat other kids as well. When they are there, they are at school. So they are there to learn, not to mistreat each other.
So now we just heard you speaking now on the podium, and there continues to be allegations of racism in this particular school. What do you say? Do you think there's racism in this school?
No, never.
Why?
All right. First of all, I want to tell you that the kids that's now in school never grew up with racism. They are what we call freeborns. All right? Yes, if two boys fight, a black guy and a black guy fight, nothing will happen. If two white guys fight, nothing will happen. But when a black guy and a white guy fight, and the white guy wins or the black guy wins, then it's racism. And that's not fair. Let's look at this situation what it is. If two kids fight, they fight, whether they're black or whether they're white.
Yeah, but what do you say? What do we do with the video that went viral? It clearly does show that there are some racial undertones in the school, and us paying a blind eye, not paying attention to that, is the problem. Don't you think so?
That's one kid. You can't have a meeting with black students, but not one white student was interviewed. How can you have 3/4 of the black kids going to school while our white kids are sitting at home too scared to come to school? Now, where does the racism come in now?
It comes in everywhere because there are some undertone of racism in the school. How do we deal with this? How do you propose as a parent we deal with matters such as these?
I think it must start, first of all, by the school governing body, the school teachers, the headmaster, and I think there should be extra rules where racism can be proven. But I would like to emphasize this. When we say create new rules, let's not start a witch hunt here. And for if I say, hey boy, then it's a racism case and we run to the teachers. Let's look at it what it is.
I want to know from you as a parent, what do you feel? Is there racism in the school?
When you have all white educators, it is structural. When the SGB is all white, it is structural. When the management of the school are all white, it is structural. So the children are learning from the parents that are here. When we are here as parents, when we have a beautiful hall that accommodated all of us, that is structural. It is a white Khefar mentality. Why are we here? Because they fear us.
So let's talk about some of the solutions that you'd like to see as a parent, because clearly there's no end to racial incidences in our schools. What do you think needs to be done?
Like I said, I was an SGB member chairperson that engaged the first principal of a white person who told us that is my school. And we engaged them, we took governance and we changed the school. I went again to a white person school that were all white and all white teachers. When we sat down, and the principal did the same. I said, ma'am, there's a division between government and education. We are here to govern. Play your part in education, will support each other. There was a resistance, but ultimately we changed the school. We managed to appoint a black female principal. Everything is running out now. That is why I'm here, because I've got a grandchild. We are going to participate together and work about that, because we have got the experience of how to do it and allow us to.
MEC, welcome to Expressions. It's great to have you on SABC News on the program. Talk to us. You spoke about bringing on the Human Rights Commission to assist in this whole issue with the alleged racist incident. Speak to me of some of the engagements that you've had and the progress so far.
I'm glad that we finalized everything now with the parents' meeting. It's quite less emotional. Emotions are, it's natural. To build a non-racial society is not easy. It has its own tension, its own limitation, and its own problems. But I'm quite pleased that everyone, as they are living now, they know they have a responsibility to build this good. And that's what pleases me.
Moving forward, as far as this particular issue is concerned, what are we expecting in the next coming weeks?
It's to expect the South African Human Rights to give us whether indeed there's racism or not in this school. If so, what action should we take? And on the basis of that report, I think we'll take action.
So we've come to the end of today's show. Sibonge kakhulu for your participation in Ey'nkundleni Zethu Zokuxhumana. Remember, see Expressions, the conversations also continue. Masesingekho Emoyeni, you can take to our social media platforms and continue the conversations. We also welcome your suggestions as umbukeli wethu in terms of how we can improve the show, as well as what topics you'd like for us to explore on the show. We thank you so much for watching namhlanje. Till next time, msale kahle.